When UC Davis experts tell you information you want to know. I'm Rick Cushman. I'm with Dr. Cassandra Lee. She is the Chief of Orthopedic Sports Medicine. And we're here today because we're about a month into the new year, and those crazy weeks when we've all bailed on our resolutions, they're done. So now we're living our real lives, and it's time to get real about the kinds of workouts that we can do that we can stick with. So today Dr. Lee is here to tell us about some exercise and fitness programs for beginners and longtime athletes that are safe and effective and even attainable and fun. And we're also going to talk about those rare people who apparently, Dr. Lee is one of them, and it's actually like 1 in 10, who have stuck to their resolutions and are continuing to work out, and where do you go from here? So Dr. Lee, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me here.
And a reminder, if you'd like to ask us a question, you can do it in the comment section and we will get to it in a bit. So, first question is really for people getting started, whether they had some resolutions, didn't keep them, or just decide, it's a good time of year. What are some of the fundamental principles that people should be paying attention to when they're starting an exercise program?
So the good thing about exercise is that it's never too late to exercise. The CDC came out with some study looking at how active Americans are, and unfortunately we're not that active. Maybe overall, on average, about 15% of us are active. And obviously, geographically, it's a little bit different. So maybe in warmer weather, it might be a little easier to be active. Or if you like the mountains, maybe colder weather is better to be active. But the reality is, it's never too late to be active. So if you're starting out and you're brand newbie to this, start slow. Start, maybe get some motivation, maybe get some ideas from other people. Join a group. But you want to start slow, and you don't want to all of a sudden, you don't want to set unrealistic goals. Like if your goal is to be, healthy as opposed to lose weight, then everything slow and steady wins the race. Nothing fast.
Well, and I know you've talked about this before because this is your line, which is showing up is really the most important thing. And that's one of the things is, I guess it's sort of how do you get your mind around this notion that, look, I should back off a little bit so I can come back tomorrow and do my workout, or Thursday, or whatever day it is that I'm going to do it. Any suggestions on how to think about that?
So I think the really hard part about when you're trying to get motivated and trying to get excited about exercise is that recovery is actually a really important part of your exercise. So for your ability your body to actually rest, recover, let your muscles recover, let them heal up. Because if you're going to start exercising, you're going to push them a little bit to their limits, right? You're going to have that soreness. You're going to have that, what we call delayed onset muscle soreness. For me, it's a 24-hour period, so I know pretty quickly that I've overdone it. But I know for a lot of other people, it might be 2 to 3 days. So it's really important to actually understand and listen to your body. You're not trying to win a medal right now. You're just trying to get to the next phase, right? So the important thing is to exercise, start slow and steady, listen to your body, but also remember recovery is important. So that includes sleep, that includes letting your body rest, that might be stretching, anything to help let your muscles repair, let your joints repair, let your body repair.
And see, there's good news there because that means when you're sitting on your couch, you're working out. Sort of.
Sort of.
If you exercise the day before.
Yes.
Okay, we'll put that in. So let's talk about building plans because this is really a good thing. And a plan is a guide. It's not a prescription. But what are some of the things that should go into thinking about your plan? And we'll go back to beginners, but then I want to talk about continuing athletes and even very experienced athletes. But let's talk about beginners first.
So if you're a beginner, getting a general ballpark plan is actually a great thing. So I'm not looking at like a recipe book where you're actually trying to hit recipe after recipe, right? You have to give yourself ability to relax and actually fail, if you will. It's okay that if you missed a workout on Tuesday because, God, you know what, Monday I overdid it and my quads are hurting me, I really don't want to do another leg day. Okay, that's great, that's fine. But come back next week, So if you had a generalized exercise plan, I think if you've never exercised before and this is brand new to you, I don't think it's realistic to jump in and go to let's exercise 5 days a week. Let's start something simple first and say, okay, well let's do, 1 to 2 days a week. Let's see if we can do like a cardio day and maybe a generalized like weight training type day, and then see how your body feels for a couple weeks. Let that get acclimated, let you get used to it, and then say like, okay, I'm building on this success. I've continued on for a month. I've worked out 2 days a week every day for this month. Great, okay. Can I do a little bit more? Can I add a third day in? So from there, just build on your successes. Take small steps, and you're going to see the results. Because really, the key is consistency.
Well, and that's a great point. And one of the parts of consistency, I know this is a conversation you and I have had before about this, is you also don't want to torture yourself because you won't come back.
Yeah.
So what should somebody be looking for? Is it just something that's fun, or do you join a group, or what are some ideas?
I think anything to get, so exercise, I think the goal of exercise, right, for general health, well-being, and just being healthy overall is to look for something to increase your heart rate. So that could be something as simple as a brisk walk. So maybe during lunchtime, go for you have lunchtime break, go for a brisk walk around the block or maybe 2 blocks. If you want to join, there's a lot of like meetup groups, like you can look online for any type of support. There's actually a lot of great exercise groups. One of my Facebook groups that we're looking at is actually an Apple Watch kind of workout group, to kind of have a little bit of competition, but it's almost friendly competition, right? It's almost that friendly, like little jab, like, hey, so-and-so's, doing a little bit more than you are. Can you step it up? Who's going to win at the end of the month? So trying to find something that's fun, that keeps you motivated, keeps you going, right?
And the other point probably, and then this is true because we're going to progress to experienced athletes, but it's true for all athletes, which is that whatever plan is that you have, it needs some flexibility in it.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
So let's just talk about different kinds of things. Well, for example, if somebody's trying to lose weight, mm-hmm. what are some of the things that they should think about as they exercise or build their plan?
So overall, if you want to lose weight, you have to there's 2 major things that you can do, right? It's what you put in your mouth, so what you eat, and then also what goes out. So what goes out, okay, not that way, but in terms of what goes out,
calories burned.
Calories burned, right? So exercise is a component of it, right? Yeah. So there's 2 ways to modify. You can change what you eat. So, and big drastic things are not going to make you happy, right? So if you like sweets and you're like, I will have no sweets for the entire month of February, you're going to be pretty angry, it's going to be hard to be that deprived. So small changes here and there, like I said, if you want to say like, okay, well maybe I'll have dessert once a week, like a processed dessert once a week, and maybe I'll substitute fruit in for something sweet at the end of the evening, that kind of thing. Exercise is also really important, right? Because that's how you burn your calories. And so with exercise, the key really to losing weight is getting your heart rate up. So getting that heart pump, get that blood flowing, get that sweat on. That's going to help you burn calories.
And I'm going to talk about that because the next question is cardio, but there's another point, which is that if you're exercising, you can't spot reduce.
I wish it was that easy. But then our plastic surgeons would be out of business.
Yeah, so that's something to always remember. I know everybody, whether it's, get that roll around the tummy or whatever it is, doing sit-ups is not going to reduce that stomach roll.
No, it isn't. Having a strong core does help, but you're going to still have that roll if you're not doing your cardio to get rid of it, right? Because I joke, we all have a 6-pack underneath, just underneath how thick your ring is. That's the difference, but we all have 6-packs underneath.
There you go.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that calorie burn and doing some cardio exercise, because it's not the only way to burn calories, but one of the most effective ones, and it's also a very healthy way to exercise. So when somebody is building a cardio workout, whether it's running or on a bike or on a Stairmaster, God help you. I'm not a fan of stationary equipment, but that's just because I don't have that stick-to-itiveness for that. What are some of the things that people should think of?
So in terms of
building their cardio.
So building cardio, so I am guilty of this. I hate cardio. I absolutely hate cardio. So I guess my trick around that is to actually do kind of what we call high intensity interval training. So it's kind of spurts of cardio, if you will. So like spurts of lots of energy for like 30 seconds on, but then I limit my recovery period to like maybe 5 seconds, 10 seconds, and then do it again. And I do it for a couple reps. It's probably not going to be as effective in building like true endurance, like for like a marathon run or anything like that, but it does up my heart rate, and it's kind of a quick way to burn calories in a small period of time.
Well, and another piece of that too is if somebody's doing a gym workout, especially if they're little light weights or whatever they're doing core stuff, is no rest period in between. In other words, if you're doing chest, then do arms, and then go back to chest, then do arms, or something, or legs and upper body back and forth, so that you are resting that muscle group, but you're not resting.
Exactly.
So that's
because that heart rate's still staying up.
Right.
So
right.
You're still breathing hard. You're still going. The blood's still flowing into those, pump into those muscles.
Right.
So.
And I can add this as a runner and former coach, is that for people who are taking up running, one of the things that we always coach younger runners is to really run as slow as comfortable, or beginning runners. It's not how hard you go. It's just get out there and really find yourself literally the slowest pace that you're comfortable at, and you'll, one, won't hurt yourself, and 2, you'll probably come back tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the key. Like I think when I used to be a runner in my former life, I would start off pretty slow when I first started a running program. But the key is just getting your mind around like, oh, can I actually just keep running? Can I keep running? If you keep running, then you realize, oh my God, I just ran a mile. I can do it. So a lot of it just kind of gets past the mental block, but it's, you know, slow and steady. I mean, I hate to sound like broken record, but slow and steady does improve.
Yeah,
And it keeps you coming back.
And right, and it's also much more pleasant.
Yeah.
So there's that. So there's the other side of the world for a lot of folks, guys, I see out there, is some guys want to get big. You know, they're really looking at muscle development. So what are the kinds of things that people should be thinking about if they wanted to do that?
So muscle development, anytime you want to, quote, hypertrophy your muscles, you're looking at kind of building like strength training. So there's different ways you can look at lifting weights. You can do equipment weights where you're on like machines, or you can do kind of free weights. From there you can look at how much weight you're lifting and how many reps you're doing. So traditionally if you do kind of lower weights, but higher weights, lower reps, so I'm talking like 10 to 15 reps type thing, you're looking, 8 to 10 reps. You're looking at probably building more bulk, if you will. And then if you drop that weight a little bit and then try to do like 15 to 20 reps, you're looking at kind of building that endurance into the muscle. So you can look at, you know, doing a combination of those types of reps to kind of help build muscle but also build endurance. And ultimately all that still translates to you burning calories. So the more muscle bulk you have, the more calories you burn. So as part of a normal exercise routine, in addition to cardio, there should be somewhere in there you should add a day or two of probably doing some weights.
I think that's probably really true, and I can say this as a older runner, is that, you know, no matter how much cardio we do, that weightlifting and core exercises and those become a really key. And so no matter what your workout is what I just heard you say, was balance in your workout is always important.
Yeah, absolutely. So you shouldn't be doing legs 3 days in a row. You should be like legs, upper body, core, butt, upper body, legs, you know, alternate that. So each body part can get rest, but then you're also working on everything together as a whole over the week.
Right, and so we were talking a little bit earlier about sort of being aware of, and certainly when you're doing heavy weights or explosive exercises, which a lot of the gym workouts do, which the heavy work. What are some of the cautions involved with that?
So the cautions so let's start with weights first. Okay, so big heavy weights, obviously technique is important. Knowing your limits is also really important. I'm not saying limit your weights and never try to get a big personal best, but make sure that you have good form, someone to spot you if you're going to really try some heavy weights. And then also make sure you're warmed up, right? That's key with a lot of it. It's just we have to make sure that warmed up. So unfortunately, things do start getting injured if you, again, don't have good form, or if you fatigue too quickly and, oh gosh, God forbid, if like the weight falls, you're gonna hurt something. So that's why it's really important to have someone there to help you spot.
You know, I want to point out about the warm-ups, and that's something that lots and lots and lots of people forget. And it isn't just going in the gym and kind of moving around a little bit. You know, when we did a Facebook Live out with Sac Republic, and the Facebook Live was 20-25 minutes, and they were warming up the entire time.
Yeah.
So, and that's what a real warm-up takes. And so really, really be careful. It takes blood to the muscles and many things. And, you know, one bad workout, you can't do workouts for a week or a month, depending.
Yeah, exactly.
So and the other thing is to pay attention. And we were talking just before. This is where the case of having full medical knowledge is both good and bad. Good is that you could tell something. Bad, you knew exactly what tendon you were stretching. Where those of us who blindly go along, oh, that's just an ache. Well, you were saying if there's something that you feel repetitively, to pay attention. Talk a little bit more about that.
So the example we were talking about is with runners. So not uncommonly, you can get something called Achilles tendonitis, which is that little tendon on the back of your heel that can sometimes flare up. So what I was saying is that when you're running and you start noticing, you know, after maybe, you know, the half mile or maybe mile point, you start noticing this little nag in that same spot in that Achilles, pay attention to that. If that consistently happens with your next run and your next run and your next run, there's a problem. There's probably something going on. And I don't think it's a bad idea to get that checked out, because what your body's telling you is that it's uncomfortable. It's not stopping you from doing what you need to be doing, but it's telling you to be like, hey, I need to be aware of this. You might need to do a little bit of more maintenance in that. You might need to be doing some stretching. You might need to be working on some other strengthening around it to help support that area so that that part doesn't become injured and break down.
Right, and that gets back to your notion of balance too, is that, you know, sometimes you're forced to do these other exercises the strength, for runners, core is key because you land evenly. For weightlifters, core is key because you pick things up evenly. Core exercises seem to be our least fun. Do you have any suggestions for a couple of core workouts that people can do that they're not going to just hate?
Maybe I'm weird. I actually do like core.
So,
but I think
that's the masochist in you.
It is a little bit of masochist in me, just because I know how important it is. So in my mind, I've kind of twisted it to make it fun. I think trying to find, you can incorporate core into every single bit of your exercises, because like you had mentioned, in running it's important to keep your body upright. In any kind of twisting, pivoting type sport. So right now let's talk about skiing, right? So skiing is super important, especially, so we're not at the level of Michaela Schifrin, but if we were, the idea is that she's able to kind of control, coming down the mountain, kind of move her legs around it, but her core still stays the same, right? So core is truly important for any twisting, pivoting sport because it kind of keeps everything balanced. So I think for me, what I found that I really enjoy with core is actually Pilates. So I work a lot on slow stretching, a lot of balance, a lot of just focusing on little muscles that I did not even know existed until I started taking Pilates classes. And then realized that is the important part of just stabilizing. And there's small stabilizer muscles. So the important thing is to understand that stabilizer muscles are your background guys. They're the ones that you're not necessarily working out when you're at the gym, lifting heavy weights and whatnot. They're the small guys that just kind of, tuck your pelvis in just a little bit, hold this in, tuck your core in right there. It's the small adjustments, but that's what helps unload the other parts of your body, like your lower back, your knees, all that depends on it.
And that's actually really, the Pilates class is a really good point. And in a way, for most of us, it's probably a good idea to get a little coaching on core stuff. And then you can find workouts that do, and whether you do it in a class, when you're doing it with the class so it feels a little less onerous, or you just know a few things that are working for you, as opposed to just doing those sit-ups, which probably are one of the least effective workouts.
Yeah. Actually, I was just thinking, this brings me back to it. So going back to finding support groups, so back to that same Facebook page that did the Apple Watch challenge. Last year, we actually did a plank challenge. Mm-hmm. So for the entire month of, I think it was February or March, we did a plank. But basically, someone put out a workout on Facebook and said, okay, today is Monday, day 1, you work on a 15-minute plank, hold it. Day 2, you work on, add another 5 minutes. I'm sorry, not 5 minutes, good grief. No, another 5 seconds.
Oh, those are mine that you're talking about, yeah.
But eventually the goal was to get to a 60-second plank by the end of the month. So that's a good place to start if you've never done a plank before.
And that's, I think, as you bring up, it sounds like what you're saying is plank is a pretty good place to start, a pretty good workout to be doing on. Then there's the front plank on your elbows.
And then on your hands, right. But then there's also variations on it. If you really want to get feisty and crazy, you can actually, if you're on a hardwood floor, you can get little sliders in front of you, or if you don't want to pay for sliders, get a towel, and then you can actually kind of move things back and forth so that you can really work on shoulder stabilizers and your core. So you can make it as crazy and as hard as you want it to be.
Then you go to the side.
Then you go to the side planks. Then you can do, actually another great one is on the big exercise balls. So you can put your elbows onto the exercise balls.
Right.
And hold the plank right there, and then you can actually kind of, one of my gyms calls it like the butter churner. So you work on just kind of going clockwise with your elbows and then counterclockwise, and then holding the stability there when you're holding that plank.
And then there's the back plank, which is the hardest.
That is a hard one, yeah.
But and so that you can also do that. You can roll around and do them. So there's all kinds of fun, fun.
Yeah,
ways.
there's all different ways to challenge yourself. And in this day of social media, you can look at everything. You can look at Instagram. You can look at just surfing the internet. You can find a great exercise program.
Yeah, it's good. And so that also translates to skiing. And this is ski time of year right now. Maybe a little bit of spring, although today's pretty darn cold, but
yeah.
It's probably might be getting a little slushy up there. So what are some of the things that people should be paying attention to as they get ready to not get hurt on the mountain?
So kind of like what we alluded to earlier is if you look back on our, we talked about exercises get you in shape for skiing, right? Because these are muscles that you may not be using year round. So working on kind of just leg muscles, core muscles, back muscles. Because a lot of it's basically you want to be able to look upright as you're going down the mountain. Because the one thing I've learned about snowboarding is if where you look is where you're going to go. So if you look down, guess what? You're going to go down. So the important thing is staying upright, having the ability to kind of control kind of the direction. So having a strong core so that you can turn and twist and not throw out your back and whatnot. So, but obviously strong legs are important too.
Well, and what about flexibility? We haven't talked a lot about flexibility. What about flexibility for skiing and some other kinds of workouts?
Flexibility. So you talk about flexibility, but I put flexibility and core strength together kind of in the same boat. They are essential for any type of exercise, especially as we get older. And yes, we are all getting older. But so flexibility, balance, and core. So I think a lot of times as a runner, where you guys get tight tend to be your hip flexors, your hamstrings, your heel cords, right?
You're talking about my life right now. Yeah, exactly.
So
right.
it's important to add some
Yeah.
kind of maintenance in there. So that's where I add when I say like, okay, you need the stability, you need the flexibility, and you need that core strength. Adding a yoga day is actually great. And if you can't handle yoga, maybe Pilates, maybe bar, something in there that helps focus on flexibility. You want to it's part of maintenance because we all have to, up through our 20s, we can probably get away with just doing anything brute force just because you have the strength, you have the flexibility, you're young, you have the hormones, whatever. But as we get into our 30s and then into our 40s, it's really important to actually work on maintenance because that's what helps keep you coming back.
Right.
Right.
Well, this brings up another point, and this is for the experienced athlete, whether it's a runner or somebody in the gym or tennis player, whatever, is that, we tend to have our routines that we do. And you've talked a lot about varying your routine. How important is that?
I think actually it's really important because the cool part about the human body is that we are able to adapt. So if you keep on jumping on that Stairmaster and you say, okay, I'm at level 6 and I'm going to crank out 30 minutes, if you keep on doing that day in and day out, yes, you feel like your heart rate's going up and you're breaking a sweat, but the reality is your body gets used to it. So you got to kind of mix it up every once in a while. You got to start challenging yourself here and there. So adding variety is actually really important.
And I imagine that's also a good way to not get hurt because now you're using new muscles and they're getting some balance. You're letting your other muscles relax or rest a little bit. So are we having any questions out there, by the way?
Would you recommend taking supplements to help with muscle recovery, like BCAAs or glutamine?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think it's really hard to answer because those supplements are actually not something that are like FDA regulated, if you will. So I can't tell you. One of the examples I'll take is glucosamine because that's something I know probably a little bit more about in my practice with cartilage preservation that I do. So glucosamine is, in theory, a building block for cartilage. But I would love to say that you can take a pill and you can build cartilage, but we're not there yet. So the problem is, I probably can't say which brand, but brand A, brand B, brand C, I can't tell you the difference between the brands because there's no actual regulation in what the stuff is in there. So the difficult part about supplements is I can't really say that, taking supplement A, B, and C is going to change that much in your recovery. When the reality is probably just changing up your exercises, let your body recover, like getting some good sleep. That's probably the best way for recovery. Also, fuel is important too, because if you think about what you're taking in, food-wise or supplement-wise, that gives you kind of building blocks to help your body fix the muscles, right?
Yeah, there are a couple of other recovery tools too. One of them you talk a lot about with skiing because people forget that you're at high altitude, you actually lose fluids or evaporation more quickly. Hydration.
Hydration is probably the best way to start actually for recovery, but then hydration actually starts before you work out. So before you even get to the mountain, you should be hydrating.
Yeah, there's an old line of runners is you should drink before you're thirsty, but it's really true for everything.
Oh, it's actually true, because by the time you're thirsty, by the time your brain registers it, it's already a little bit too late.
Yeah, and what about some of the other sorts of things like foam rollers, which is a pretty easy thing to find and they're fairly inexpensive. Since we can't afford to get them or find time to get a massage every day, how effective are things like foam rollers?
I think it's just part of like whatever works with your body, whatever works with your system. So as long as you have some way of like maybe flushing out the lactic acid, that might be a good thing to do. So foam rolling I think is effective, stretching I think is effective. But again, mixing up your workouts day to day is important. So again, you should be doing leg presses or leg weights on Monday and then like do a spin class on Tuesday and then back to legs. You gotta mix up maybe upper body, core, something.
And what about cool downs? Racers know this, or whether it's ski racers or elite runners know to jog a little bit after a race or ski a little bit lightly after a while. How about for gym workouts? How important are cool downs for gym workouts?
I think it's the same concept because basically you can't go from 60 back to 0 and then just kind of go on your day.
Which
right?
you kind of want to, right? You're done. I'm going in, right?
I think I'm guilty of that too. But the reality is, I think you need to kind of give your body a chance for the heart rate to kind of come down, kind of your breath to normalize. And then sometimes when you just after a big run, especially like you know you're fully anaerobic at that point, right? You have all these things pumping up in your muscles, so you need to have the ability to flush out your muscles. So doing some kind of easy laps, again, not going for it, but just letting things just kind of easily just flow out is important.
Okay. Well, I'm going to summarize a couple of things and then tell me if I missed any. So one of them we talked about is balance and being moderate. And you can go hard, but start with moderation and slowly build up, recover. It's huge. Build time in your workout for both the warm-up and the cool-down. And don't forget to recover, because that's when sitting on your couch can actually be helpful.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Well, that's it for today. Thank you, Dr. Lee, for all your advice and your wisdom, and for making me feel like I should be stretching a whole lot more, and I appreciate that. And if anybody has any more questions, or you watch this and then have a question, put it in the comments section and we'll get you an answer. We'd love it if you share this with your family and friends, because it's such great stuff. And they might be interested in hearing this. And join us again tomorrow, Wednesday, for a discussion on cleft and craniofacial surgery. Thanks for joining us.